Stranahan, co-chairman of the Sesquicentennial Committee. Yay! Woo! Everybody who's on that committee, and a lot of you are out there, can you wave your hand, please? Okay. And you see on your program a list of partners, and those are the people that are really working hard to make this happen. Let me recognize a few officials. I hope I don't miss anybody who are out there. We have Judge Mills, Sheriff Mills, thank you. Pat Russo, saw you here, Commissioner. Bubba Casterline, Commissioner, thank you. Pat Rios, City Mayor, and Bob Cunningham, City Council. Did I catch everybody? Okay, thank you. So glad you could come out and support this effort. It's really going to be a fun year this whole year, and we're glad to get started here in January. So Betty, co-chairman, would you please come up and do the pledges to the flags?
The flags are behind you. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Oh. Please join me as I pray. Father God, we thank you for the blessings of this new day and the hope we have on what is to come. We stand here today as a people living in the gap of what was and what is to come. We find ourselves as the voices of the past and the vision of the future. In Jeremiah 29:11, you tell us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." In Deuteronomy 32:7, you tell us, "Remember the days of old, consider the years of many generations. Ask your fathers, and he will tell you, your elders, and they will tell you." We invite your presence here with us today as we follow your command not only to remember the past, but to preserve it and to give hope to the future. May we not only hear the plans you have for us, but also act on those plans so that we do have hope for the future. We honor your presence here today as we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Mike and Mike. It's the Mike and Mike show.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Gear. I'm the vice chair for the Ramsey County Historical Commission. And in 2019, early 2019, I was heading up and still am, the public outreach committee for the commission. And one of the things that Chairperson Stiles and I recognized right away is that we probably needed to do an updated marker guide. The last one was done in 2010. And it certainly served its purpose, but consider we had 36 markers in that guide, and there's 56 in the one that's here today with us. We have 77 markers altogether, but we have 56 represented in the publication. But naturally, that was going to be ultimately handed off to somebody that had a little bit more capability with respect to putting a publication together. So Mike approach with the pilot was the natural next step. But I'd like to take a second to thank the folks that helped put it together from the Historical Commission side. And obviously that was Commissioner Stiles and Commissioner Stranahan, Pam, and then Sandy Garrison and Sandra Bridges. And then also special thanks to Colin Jackson for all the research that you did on that. But couldn't have done it without somebody that was computer literate. But anyway, when we finally got to a point that we were selling ads and got down the line with that, we started kind of hitting a wall at about 65-75% of the ads being sold. And so when we handed it off to Mike, he said, no problem, I'll get those last 25 sold. And sure enough, he did. And so now you see the publication here, and it's terrific, and it should be with us for the next 8 or 10 years. And it was really good advertisement dollars spent, if you ask me. And so when the next one comes around, might not be a bad thing to get on it early. So here's Mike Probst.
Thanks, Mike. I have very brief comments. First of all, Jerry, I want to say something. I never say it to you, but I always enjoy your invocations. I really do. So anyway, Mike already covered a lot of the stuff that, we started this at the end of 2019. Like I said, we had done it, published one in 2010, and there were only like 36 markers at that time. Then there's 56, and then I want to first of all, thank everybody on the commission and everything, because I know I gave you a heart attack as you're wondering, is this damn thing ever going to get done? And unfortunately, I work best under pressure and deadlines. So when it came down to when you told me it's going to be distributed at this event, I said, okay, I guess we better get to work. So anyway, the history, I just want to comment. I'm not involved with the History Center that much or intimately involved like so many of y'all, but history has always been important to me. I know when, as a kid growing up, we didn't have much money, but we drove and camped all over Texas and many states and everything. And my mom, I know I'm going to date myself, and many of y'all are going to know what the guideposts were. We stopped everywhere and read the markers. There were a few times that I didn't really like her stopping at all those markers, but by osmosis, we just kind of, all of us kids, we learned a lot about Texas, that a lot of people didn't. To me, it's real impressive. Like I said, that 10 years ago, we put one of these out, and there's 36 that were in that marker, and now there's 20 more. And that's a tribute to y'all out there on the different commissions and all. I know there's the different groups, the Friends group, the commission, the society, and I know there's a lot of overlap and everything, but y'all need to pat yourselves on the back, because it's really, it's actually kind of unfortunate that so many people don't understand the history of Aransas County and don't really see what all we have here. Just something else is a side note. This coincided when Mike said when y'all doing the Sesquicentennial, and of course it was after Harvey, and it was great thinking together, because I was thinking, how in the hell can I get some more revenue after Harvey? And he said, hey, we need to do a historical marker guide. The last one y'all did was in 2010, and we'll help sell the ads. So we started meeting, and then COVID came around, and we all know how that thwarted everything. But, in all honesty, leave everything to the man upstairs, and this works out a whole lot better, because it coincides with the county sesquicentennial. But welcome everybody here, and it's a pleasure doing that. And it's even more of a pleasure to have lived here for 36 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does everybody have a guide? Would you raise your hand if you don't? I don't know if our guys got them all out. Who doesn't have a guide in your lap? Here's one over here. Everybody needs a guide. That's the purpose today. And all of the information that we've got in there, we want you to be sure that you have this. What I'd like to do now is have people who have marker guides to tell us about your guide very quickly. Start with the Whites.
Hi, folks. We're Wayne and Melissa White. We have the old Baylor Norville house over on Water Street. I've had that place about 21 years now, and I say this, that place called to me when I first saw it for sale, and I was very fortunate. We were fortunate to have it. The marker guide talks about the fact that our community has withstood many hurricanes, which it certainly has, and that old house has. I want to say it's nice to be home. I'm just back from the South Pole. I've spent a total of 3 years at that place, and been around the world quite a bit in the last 25 years. So it's great to actually be home and get to see my lovely wife again. So.
Okay. And here's a flag. You have a flagpole, or you'll get one. Okay, very good. Okay, here's the Robertsons for the Cedar.
I'm Jeannie Robertson. I'm here on behalf of my parents, Marion and Richard Robertson, who are are waiting for their second COVID shot to come back down. But we are at the Cedars, also on Water Street. We're just right down the street from you. If you remember, the old Cedars Tourist Court back in the 1928 is when it was built. And our landmark just marks the history of Rockport's tourism industry. And my great-grandfather started staying at the Cedars as a circuit preacher back when, after those houses were demolished by the storm of 1919 and the Cedars was built. So it's been a community gathering place for my family and friends, groups of friends that have become their own family for many, many years. It's really neat to walk down Water Street and see the landmarks, the markers that are there, and to see people stop at our place to read about the history of Rockport. So we're very privileged to have it at our place and have that beautiful view. Thank you all for helping us preserve it.
Okay, Jennifer, would you tell us about the depot?
I will. I am very excited about the depot acquisition. I am here representing the Rockport Cultural Arts District, and the historic depot is going to be donated to the Cultural Arts District. It sits right in the middle of the district. It will serve as a transportation hub. We will have bicycle rentals. We will be a trolley stop. We will have railroad exhibits inside. We will be on a pathway, walking pathway. We'll have a parking that will support the new civic complex as well as the new arts complex going in. So we're very excited. And when you mentioned tourism, if you'll remember, the reason why Rockport is here is the railroad. In 1888, when the railroad came to Rockport, railroads made or broke cities. And so we're just very, very excited that after all this time, we're getting very close to the acquisition. Thank you.
Cindy, tell us about Lamar.
Hello, I'm Sandra Gregory Bridges. I grew up in Lamar. My mother, June Gregory, is also a native Rockport person. We are the secretary and treasurer, and we're excited to be part of the Sesquicentennial and hope to have a nice tour. We're trying to get descendants that have kind of stepped up. So we're hoping to have actual family descendants of those that we have historical markers for. So this is kind of fun to look forward to.
Thank you. Hey, Gary, could you tell us about Connie Hager? We represent the Friends of Connie Hager, and it's located not where the marker is. It's at First and Church Street. However, Connie Hager, as you know, was a huge integral part of Rockport. She's known as the Bird Lady of Texas, and we're trying to keep her legacy alive through grants and the help of a Ranches Pathway. So if you get a chance, visit all her markers, all her land markers across the city of Rockport. Thank you. And there is a marker for her at the bay. Mayor Rios.
Thank you, Pam. The city of Rockport was organized in 1867 by the Mathis cattle family, and I believe in 1871, when Aransas County was formed, was taken out of Refugio County. Rockport became the county seat. We just had the Rockport Sesquicentennial last year. We were actually a little older than Aransas County, but we've got COVID out, so all of our parties, events, festivals were canceled. I'm glad to see this thing coming together. I'm also glad to see that we're getting put back together. When Pam asked me about the marker, I thought she was talking about our bicentennial marker, which is sitting in a warehouse at the Public Service Center. It was used to be in front of the city hall. Harvey took that down, but it will be put up in the side of the new city hall once that's complete. The current markers at Orleans and Business 35.
You're going to have to talk about too.
Well, my husband Jeff and I, we say we're twice cursed, but I say we're twice blessed. We own two historic homes here in Rockport. The first one, we've been in 10 years now. The Fulton Grill House, which is next door to the Chamber of Commerce and Cook's House, where that little white house is between the two. We did that project 10 years ago, so we can have a place to come and relax and enjoy Rockport. Then we acquired about 5 years ago the R.H. Wood House, which is also 1868, and it's right next door to Jennifer and Rusty and Angel Rose on North Magnolia. And we bought that with the idea that we would be able to entertain our extended families, and our architect Larry Ersake also joined in on that project, as did some friends of ours from Houston. But anyway, we rent that one out for weddings and vacation rentals, all kinds of parties. So that we love having everybody in there enjoying the house as much as we do.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kesterline.
How are y'all on Bubba Kesterline? For anybody that doesn't know me, we have a marker at the side of our old fish company. My uncle Cecil Kesterline went in the seafood business in the 30s along Fulton Harbor, right in the vicinity of where our place was. In 1944, my grandfather and he bought the property that our business was on. After my dad came back from World War II, he joined with him, and you know, we were blessed by having a really hard working family. And I know when we did our marker, I tried to make a point to include the people that worked for us, because we were very fortunate that we had generations of families that worked for our family and pretty much became parts of our family. And I think my uncle, my dad, and also my grandfather were a really good judge of people. And to me, that was the secret to our success, is the people that worked for us. And, you know, a lot of stories are told about it. I run into people of their father, their grandfather worked there. And a lot of people now don't realize in Fulton, along Rockport Harbor, in the 50s, the 40s, 50s, 60s, there were literally hundreds of people that worked in the fish companies along the harbors in both harbors. And like I say, it's, you know, we're proud to be some of the history of the county and Fulton and Rockport, and you know, still here.
Thank you. So I'm handing flags to these people that have markers so that we can get our Sesquicentennial flag all over town. And we're really looking forward to that. Let's hear from the Fulton Mansion.
Hey, thanks, Ben. I'm Joe Fox from the Fulton Mansion. This is Kristen Morgan. So we're right on the bay. Our marker represents the home of George W. Fulton, who is one of the town founders. In this area, he was originally one of the pioneers with Harriet Smith and Henry Smith. Most of the land making up Aransas and San Patricio counties came out of a cattle company called the Fulton Mathis Coleman Pasture Company. They built packing sheds over here, which instead of taking cows up the cattle drives up north to Kansas, they shipped them out of the packing plants here in Fulton by steamboat to New Orleans. So they were one of the community builders. They built this mansion between 1874 and 1878. Part of which is a dream home, but the other part of it was to attract investors in the town. They played an instrumental role in building and getting a railroad down here, which opened the way for farmers and then eventually tourism as well. Thank you.
Hey, Fisher, who wants to talk?
My name is Bill Fisher, and my wife John. We own the house, 801 South Church, the Heinz Balthrop house. I think my wife loves it because it's definitely a part of the Catholic Church here. Served as the first meeting place for the Catholics before they actually built the church. Probably our most fun here, other than restoring the house, which I been working on it, and Joan too, for 20 years, is so many of the people that actually lived in that house have come by to visit us. We've had couples all the way back to the 30s who have come. And then last year, we got a letter from McClendon. Yeah. Anyway, his great-great-grandfather owned the house back in the early 1900s when it was moved from Austin Street to where it is now. And he actually sent us pictures of the house. We had been looking and looking because the Hines, who actually still live in the area, the original builders of the house, he had pictures, but somehow he can't find them. So we were really lucky. But of course, other than just enjoying living in Rockport, we have certainly enjoyed living in this house.
Okay, have I missed anybody? I was looking for a couple of other people that I thought were going to be here. Let me say you can buy your very own flag over here. Oh, good. You can buy your very own flag over here at the table.
Very own mug.
Thank you. I'm just standing in the back here. I'm John Jackson. My wife Debbie's here with me and my son Colin. We have sponsored 3 of these historical markers. The first one has already been mentioned. It's the Baylor Norval House. It was our actual ancestral home. We're the Norval part of that house. The interesting thing about that house, that probably most of you know about it already, is that our grandparents were in that home during the hurricane of 1919 and survived it. And there was a lot of memoirs written about that at the time, that my great-grandmother, her name was Irene Norval, and her husband was Elisha. They came here in Rockport because of the railroad. It's been mentioned 2 or 3 times. So the railroad was a big deal in Aransas County. The second marker that we sponsored is called the Jackson Maritime Companies. It's over in the Veterans Memorial Park, right across the street from the Women's Club. We had the property on the harbor, approximately 7 acres, that my grandfather purchased back in 1919. Actually, it was 06, and then he and his brother had it then, and then in 1919, the brother moved to Sinton. So we had a fleet of Gulf Shrimp boats, very much like the Castellines did, and very similar operation in the Rockport Boat Harbor from 1906 to 1990. I spent 17 years after college in the business with my dad too. And like Bubba said, there's a lot of interesting people that we had over the years who worked for us, who have been a part of this community and still are here. The third one we sponsored is the one called the Wood Jackson Home. It's at 701 North Magnolia. That's where my grandparents, Stephen Ford Jackson and his wife Irene, who was the Irene daughter of the Norvals. By the way, my grandfather was the mayor of Rockport at one time, Stephen Ford Jackson. That was the home that they lived in. The house that we all grew up in was 1 block north of there, 801 North Magnolia. It does not have a historical marker, but interestingly, my grandfather actually lived in that house first in 1913 when it was built. And my father was born in that house, and that's where all of us Jacksons were raised all the way through to the, I guess, the early 70s. So we've been here a long time. We appreciate all the people that came out today, and we think so much of Aransas County and its history. We wanted to do our part. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Betty. Oh, okay. Sure. I'm on there for the Pathways map. You should have gotten a map in your with your marker guide. And I just want to remind you that all of these historic homes are on that map, so you can easily find them.
Hi, for those that might not know me, I'm Bert Mills. And I'm here to represent the Mills Wharf plaque that's out across the bridge. As you might know, my grandfather was the first manager of St. Charles Bay Hunting Club, and somewhere after he started that, he decided to go into business for himself, so he moved down the bay a little bit, started building Mills Wharf. That's about the same time they were building the bridge across Kokomo. He made a deal with Texas Department of Transportation, or whoever was building it, for their station area. They could use part of his land, but he needed some pilings to put his building on. So they gave him some pilings, spliced them together, drove them in the ground. I guess that's how they got in the ground. I don't know. Anyway, he built this hunting and fishing resort or lodge, and it became pretty famous. And not only as a hunting and fishing place, but as a party place. He had big main bands there, and from what I'm told, they had quite a few big parties, and people drove from Gonzales, Victoria, and came across the new bridge when it was finally built, and by boat before that. So it was here, and my father and uncle took it over and ran it until they sold it to Tudley Wynn, and it became Seagun Resort. Thank you.
Thank you. One for the house and one for the county. Great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Betty Stiles, and I'm co-chair with Pam on the Sesquicentennial Committee, also Historical Commission Chair. And I wanted to talk to you about the fishing pier. That's a great segue that the judge just gave us, because Pam and I decided we needed a piece of that pier. We were told by the Texas Historical Commission that it was not considered historical, and to us it was part of the Texas Highway program, and so we wanted to preserve it. So we found out who to talk to, and we called a young man from Russell Marine who was doing the demolition, and his name is Richard Prince, and he was a prince. Absolutely. She and I, we got our cars nasty because it was bad, windy day that day. Anyway, he said, let me see what I can come up with. And so he did. And he not only came up with it, but he delivered it and put it in. Now, I also have a piece that I presented to the judge. And another gentleman from Russell Marine by the name of Robert Lewis took it upon himself to take this square. He saw this square rebar. You don't see square rebar these days. And so he took it, sanded it all down, got all the rust off of it and the concrete off of it, and put a finish on it and presented us with 4 pieces. And I don't know who Russell Marine is, but I guarantee you I'd like to see him back because they really think about us as far as history. So we're very proud. I gave one of these to the society, one to the commission, and one to the Friends of the History Center, and one to our judge. Thank you. What? You want me to go this way? The light belongs to Keith. That's the Navigation District light, the Navigation District sign. They maintained this for many, many years. They had a contract with Texas Department of Transportation to operate it, and so they did, and they've maintained it over the years, and we just hated to see it go. But anyway, I just will turn this over to Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Betty. I guess talking about the pier and the loss thereof, I really don't think anybody realizes the amount of people's lives that touched, because it was there so long and so many generations used it. It was just sad to see it go. A lot of you don't realized that when it started going away quite quickly. The operator that operated the 2 bait camps on each end called me a little bit before dark and said, "There's something wrong with the pier." I'm like, "What? What's wrong with the pier?" He goes, "You just got to come see it." So when I walked about halfway down, you could see it rise up probably a foot or so more than in normal when it was level. And so I knew there was some shifting taking place. At that point, I removed everyone from the pier. That was in the summer months. There was literally hundreds of people on the south end of the Copano Pier. And I moved them back beyond that area that looked a little strange. Lo and behold, that very night, that section, which was about 40 feet long, collapsed and went all the way down into the bay. If we wouldn't have removed those people, literally, we could have had many fatalities. And so that really set upon a chain reaction that really ended the fishing pier for pedestrian use. TxDOT came out, they brought divers, started doing inspections of what not just you could see on the above side, but below. And so once they saw that those pilings that had been there for almost 90 years had deteriorated to a point that it couldn't hold up its own weight. And if you look at this, it was a concrete base with asphalt on top like a road, handrails, lights, and all those different things. So it serviced us very well, but once it started going away, a repair was just really not feasible. If we did some spot repairs, we would have very new structure against the structure that was, nearing, 90 years old. So the decision was made to remove it, even though now it's been removed for what now, almost a little over a year and a half, that the access ability was cut off. I get calls, my ladies in the office get calls about when is the fishing pier coming back or what happened to the fishing pier. Because of the fact it was so used, it's always, I think, going to have a place in the hearts of those who used it. So that's a little background on the removal. Oh.
We have a little bit of an emergency. Somebody's parked in front of a house on the next street, Mazda with a license number MCW 9414. Could you move it? A Mazda, gray Mazda. Okay, thank you.
Well, it's got to get out though. But anyway, the fishing pier, I'm glad Betty is one of the people on this committee that doesn't take no for an answer. She has chased artifacts, and she has been persistent to a point that the guy was a prince, but I can tell you it wasn't without the pushing of Betty, because she had talked to me about seeing if we could get a piece of this. And I think hopefully as people still remember the pier fondly, this will give them a constant reminder. Thank you, Betty. Well, I'll segue into the Rocky Point. For those of us here at the History Center, Rocky Point should mean a lot to us. That is really where Rockport got its namesake, is the Rocky Point, the natural harbor that point created. But when the new harbor was built, and it's long from new now, that point was dynamited up to make way for what we know as Rockport Harbor and the areas along the harbor. During our last dredging project, I dredged out in front of Wharf Street. How I guess ironic that in front of Wharf Street, in between there and I guess you would say water, there was a section that our contractor hit that he couldn't break through. We had to bring in some more aggressive machinery to try to get down to the depth that we were prescribed to dig to meet our permit requirement. And lo and behold, we started breaking up some small piece of Rocky Point. So we tried to get pretty aggressive with it and get some larger pieces. And once again, the History Center, because of the importance of that Rocky Point and to being being the namesake of our community, we wanted to basically get a piece that could be seen and displayed for everyone. And I think that's a nice representation of what we pulled out of that area of the bay. But they did a pretty good job of blasting it. Dynamite at that point was pretty cheap because it was blown off about 10 feet below the mud line. And that was right at the edge of our dredge depth. So it was really a stroke of luck that we found it. And it was even more of a stroke of luck that we could, bring a few nice pieces to the surface. But for us in Aransas County, and especially the History Center, and those of us that are concerned about the history of our community, to actually see a piece of Rocky Point, our namesake. Thank you.
Thank you. Dee, you're up.
Dee, you're up.
Dee McClellan.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Keith. I'm Dee McClellan, and I live at 162 Front Street out in Lamar. We bought that house from a good friend of ours, Skip and Carol Langley, in about 2004. And when he was showing me around and all the various amenities and features, he said, there's a remains of an old shellcrete house here on the front of this lot, and you're going to get that at no extra charge. So I said, oh, great, okay. And, I drove back and forth past that thing for several years, didn't think much about it. And so I started asking some questions. What is this thing and where did it come from? Got some interesting answers. Most of them were true. But one was that Samuel Colt had lived there at one time. Said, hey, that's kind of cool. Well, I checked, and Samuel died in 1862, so the arithmetic doesn't work. The one I really liked is that Jean Lafitte kept a mistress there. Okay. Did some checking. There again, the arithmetic didn't work. Old Jean passed away sometime in the mid-1820s, and I think his mistress was probably up in Galveston, but still on full moon nights, I'd peek out the front window just to make sure. And a few years later, I became involved with the Aransas Pathways Project, and I had the privilege of working with some of these very nice ladies, Ms. Stiles, Pam Stranahan. Pam was a member of our steering committee, still is. Betty, she's pretty much a member of everything. And so we started talking about the Shellcrete house. And incidentally, that house, about a third of it lies on my lot, and 2/3 of it lie on the lot just to the west that's owned today by some friends of ours from Houston, Jeff and Robert Floyd. And the line goes right down, 1/3 through the. Jerry, did you do that survey? Yeah.
When it was built in about 1800, I did too.
I couldn't resist that one. No, seriously, I recognized that this was a piece of history. I just had no clue what to do with it. And started talking with Pam and Betty. And the Pathways Project, one of their projects was to move the Will Paul Johnson house here, set it up, and refurbish it so it would become the History Center. And that's one of our prouder accomplishments for Pathways, by the way, in large part because of the great job these ladies out here have done managing this thing, keeping it going, and having a wide variety of exhibits. So I'm very pleased with that. And as we got to talking, we said, well, that would get a piece of it. You could make an outdoor exhibit here now that you have this space. And here again, I think Betty probably had a lot of responsibility on this. There's a fellow named John Lee, who is a building contractor around here. And she somehow badgered John Lee into agreeing to try to move a chunk of this thing. And about that time, Uncle Harvey came to visit, and the whole east wall of that Shellcrete house came down, lying flat in my yard. I guess it's probably, actually that wall was higher than my head and probably about 12 or 14 feet wide. And I never forget, I drove in the driveway one day, and Betty and John Lee and 2 or 3 folks were standing out there kind of going like this. And you could just see that little balloon like in the cartoons from John Lee, like, what are they getting me into here? And I don't know if anybody's ever tried to pick up a piece of that shell creek, but it is unbelievably heavy. And after some head scratching, John got a crew out there and got a big section of that thing moved, and it rests over there. They did a great job of setting it up so it's a display. And, you know, it's a real great example of that type of construction, which was prevalent around here back in the day, and also on the East Coast, as I understand it, where I believe it was referred to as tapping. I'm really pleased that we were able to work that out and add that to the History Center. So that's my story.
Thank you, Dee. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our county judge, Judge C.H. Burt Mills.
I guess because I am the judge, I get the privilege to unveil this monument that we have today and tell you what it says. We, the citizens of Aransas County, do hereby dedicate this monument to mark the 150-year anniversary. Our celebration includes the totality of our cultural heritage. Our hope is to foster pride in local stories and encourage study which will result in a better understanding and deeper appreciation of Aransas County in the Texas history. Now, therefore, you want to unveil them? Yeah. Okay, let's do it. Yeah. Here we go.
Yay.
And this will go on the county courthouse grounds across from New City Hall in the hopefully near future. Now, therefore, we, the Aransas County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim the year 2021 as 150-year Sesquicentennial of Aransas County and encourage our citizens to celebrate, to celebrate, participate, and enjoy the planned events and festivals that will be taking place beginning June 12th and going through June 20th, 2021. We're going to have a party, whether COVID likes it or not, hopefully in June. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. So we hope you'll stay for a few minutes and have a glass of wine or a bottle of water and some crackers and cheese. Thank you for coming. For those of you who haven't been here earlier, we've got an exhibit of quilts inside that's really quite good. The art is amazing, and you'll really enjoy that. We also have mugs, and this is a commercial part of the program. we have commemorative mugs and flags for sale right back here. So we really, really appreciate your coming out today. Thank you so much for being a part of this history.